Hello. So nice to see you. How gorgeous to see you all on a Saturday night. Lovely. Thank you for coming.
Who's had a chance to read the book?
No.
Yet.
It's only just out, a minute and a half ago.
Right. Well, look, I have, and it's very moving, very funny, very sad, but never depressing, particularly if you've got empathy. Wendy is a classic example of triumph over tragedy and over the the human spirit triumphing. Through this book, you'll see a person who just kept piling up the roadblocks to climb to the top of them to get a better perspective. And I've just enjoyed this thoroughly. I was saying to Wendy the other day that the memoir that I read that I loved as well, nearly as much as this, was Clive James' unreliable memoir.
Oh my goodness me, that is such an accolade. How many notes are in that book, Scott?
How long have you got, Wendy?
Oh, it's going to be here.
Well, let's start at the start.
Yes, start at the start.
And obviously there are some things in this book that maybe still aren't resolved. You know, things that are pretty tough when it comes to the family dynamic.
Yep.
We can choose our friends, the old adage. But on page 9, you talk about your mother and a picture of your mother in a school jumper.
Yeah.
When she was holding you as a baby.
Yeah, that's right, 17 years old. I start out with the book. I did an Australian story back in 2005, and they interviewed my mother and father, which was pretty terrifying. I mean, I was sitting there with my husband Brendan, my 2 little kids, and it was pretty terrifying because my mother and father had been separated for 50 years or something, 40, 50 years, something like that. And they'd never spoken to me about the day that I was born. And my father, bless him, he says, you know, when Wendy was born, she was a disastrous looking thing. I'm thinking, no, thanks, Dad. He said, you know, if she wasn't human, she would have been put down. And, but thank God we didn't. Terrific, Dad. No, great. And he said she could be loved, but she couldn't be mollycoddled. When I was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate. And my mother recalls, you know, she was 17 years old. She recalls that the doctors came in and said, we're not going to let you see the baby for 7 days. And then when she finally did see me, they said it was one of the most, you know, severe cases that they had seen. So that's where my story starts. And I think if you would allow me, Scott, I might just quickly segue into how the book got its name, because I think it's quite an intriguing title. What happened when I was 8 years old, I went to school and I came home and the kids had been picking on me. The thing about my cleft lip and palate is, now I'm sure you know this by now, that when children are born these days with this condition, we don't call it a hair lip, by the way, for reasons I'll tell you a little bit later, but these days they pick it up by ultrasound. And kids have the reconstructive surgery when they're usually before they're 1 year old. But when I was born in 1955, it was believed that plastic surgery is a very evolving discipline. They believed that they couldn't do the surgery that I required until my head stopped growing. So I didn't have my major reconstructive surgery till I was 15 years old. So what happened this particular day, I came home from school and I said the boys had been picking on me and that they'd been calling me Eagle Beak and Wendy the Witch and, you know, all these, flat face and all these terrible names. And my mother said to me, you go and stand in front of that mirror in your bedroom. Go to your bedroom, stand in front of that mirror And when you find something to complain about, you come out and tell me. Well, there was quite a bit to complain about. My nose was a lot broader than it is now. I haven't got much of a profile even now, but I had less of one then. I had like only little stumps of top teeth that are going sideways, and this top lip was sort of hoiked kind of up there. It had all been patched up in a rudimentary fashion when I was a baby. And so I stood and I looked at that mirror, and I came out and I said, nothing. I've got nothing to complain about. And my mother says, that she cried and cried after I said that. And only just recently, after all those years, 60 years later, I'm talking to my mother, and she admits that lesson was brutal. Mm-hmm. And it'd be interesting to talk about how parenting is. I would not dream of doing that with my children, Scott.
Well, really,
yeah, it has changed.
Parenting.
But that's where that's where the title comes from.
Well, you were a surrogate mother at a very young age, and there's something in the book that really had the tears flowing about your brother Phil.
Yeah.
What he said to you.
Oh yes. Well, we go on a bit now. It's a bit of background here. You're getting.
And Noel. Sorry, it's a very moving book.
Oh.
But Noel had.
My brother Noel was also
too.
Born with a cleft lip.
And we learned in the book that it's a common congenital
yeah,
problem.
about 1 in 800.
7 or 800.
800
so
kids are born.
Lots of kids are born now, but they didn't have to live for right through their teenage years to get surgery as you did.
And the reason it is called a hair lip, do you know why? Well,
I do, but I won't say.
H-A-R-E, lip. And it comes from medieval times, when it was believed that a woman who gave birth to a child with a cleft palate, with a cleft of some sort, had a hair, like a rabbit hair or a rabbit, had crossed her path in the middle of the night, or on a path, somewhere, and thus the child was born with that parted lip. That's where we get hair lip from.
H-A-R-E.
H-A-R-E, and of course a lot of people spell it H-A-I-R, which is wrong as well. But now we don't. It's sort of like saying spaz or cripple or something.
It's a very derogatory term. Yeah.
But so what happened was, my mum, my dad was a rural school teacher in country Victoria, and we moved from school to school. And my mother, she had me, and then she had 4 children and a miscarriage and an ectopic pregnancy by the time she was 22. Yeah, I know, so young. And so she was in the last ectopic pregnancy she had. She woke up at the age of 22, and the doctors said to her, "We think that you've suffered enough, Margaret, so we've given you a tubal ligation." And they didn't even ask her. And she believes that's where the sort of depression and so forth first came in. So she tried to take her life with an overdose of Seconal. And that's what you're referring to there, is the fact that my mum, she went back to live in Tasmania, where she came from, but then she came back to the family for a little while, but then she left again. And so by the age of 11, I was the eldest with 4 kids, and my brother, I became kind of the surrogate mum of the household. Because tell everyone what my father used to do, Scott.
Well, Dad was a great footy player and loved to drink with the boys. A social drinker, I guess.
Not an alcoholic.
No, not
just
an alcoholic.
Beer makes everything go better.
And a smart fella, because he was a well-educated man. But he'd take off and leave Wendy in charge. But it was lucky, because you had a very safe place to play, as we see on page 67. Like they have for the kids with those softball playgrounds and all of that. You might read a little bit about where you had to play on page 67, because I think people who've got children here might be interested to
Yeah.
hear about the safety aspect
So
of all of that.
We moved around from town to town, but when Mum left, we were living in Bendigo. That was the only time that we ever had a we ever lived in a good sized town. Most of the time, it was in these little 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Two
And you went
country
from these little
schools.
ramshackle places that were
Yeah.
freezing and falling down,
Yeah,
the
yeah, we did.
1800s weatherboards, to you went to a school that was like Hogwarts. It's an
but,
incredible place.
I mean, does anyone know Bendigo? We got any Bendigoites here? You know Camp Hill State School on the top of the hill. It looks like Hogwarts.
It's incredible.
It is the most amazing school. But what happened was, I mean, my childhood was spent in 1 and 2 teacher country schools. I'm sure many of you have been to those little schools. In Victoria, Jeff Kennett closed down 350 of them. So often, we were I mean, you go back to where I sort of was brought up, and it's like I'm in the witness protection program, Scott, because they've all demolished.
They're gone.
They're gone. I've got to tell you, we did. This will blow your mind, and any kid who would hear about this would think it was. I'm sorry if I'm a bit warmish, but anyway, so we lived in the last one of its kind in Victoria, the last ever one of this piece of architecture, where the school and the residents were in the one building. Now, this would terrify most children. The fact that to go to school, because my sister, my brother, they went to the school, and we were living in the residence. To go to school, they walked out the back door, like dunk dunk dunk, ding. In there, they were in school, which was, but for us it was fantastic.
Didn't little Helen once make a startling entry before she was a school age?
Oh yeah, well we all grew up in schoolrooms, and when I was little, I mean, my little sister used to toddle over with her nappy dragging on the ground, and I'd have to pick her up and take her out, because we're all in the grade 6 boys, because only a few of us in the same school. She grew up to be Penthouse Pet of the Year. She was. My sister was Penthouse Pet of the Year in 1981. And I remember I was working as a journalist at the time, and I remember she came to visit the newsroom in a see-through blouse. And it took me back to those days at that school when I had to drag her out in front of all the grade 6 boys because she was in the nude. But anyway, I digress. But so we were living in, but we did go to one really big school. I did, and that was in Bendigo, and it's a terrible thing, obviously, to not have your mum and dad in the household, And I'm 11, and there's like the 4 of us, but you get to go feral, right? There's no one around, so you can do whatever you like. And the place that we used to play when we lived in Bendigo, over the back fence, were the old gold diggings. So there were all the tunnels and the poppet heads and the mine shaft. Well, this was just brilliant as far as we were concerned. I mean, if my kids went anywhere near that,
a mine
Scott,
shaft.
I was lucky that we all weren't suffocated and we all didn't perish. But that's where we used to play.
I love that bit.
And,
I mean, it's just incredible.
I mean, I know that you love the story of my brother Noel, who
The bike stunt.
Yeah. So, my brother Philip was a bit of the entrepreneur out of my 2 younger brothers, and he convinced my brother Noel that if he could ride a push bike off a mullock heap, this big mullock heap thing, that he would land in a willow tree and then, ta-da, and then cycle away. So he rounded up all the neighbourhood kids, charged them 5 cents each. And this was tremendous. This was going to be tremendous. They borrowed a kid's bike. Wonderful. Anyway, Noel comes hurtling down this hill, goes off the cliff. He's good for about 3 feet, and then he goes down like a shot duck. Anyway, but Phil got the money, and it was all good.
But how did you survive?
We had all these incredible.
How did you survive digging into a mullock heap and creating a cave with candles, and you had a clubhouse in there with all the boys.
Yeah, no, we used to slide down.
But how did that not fall on your head?
No, but we used to slide down the Mullock Heaps on bits of corrie iron. You know, it was like, that's country kids.
Sit on a
skiing,
knife.
isn't it? and then we would dig out under the clay. We'd go down in the mine shafts and we'd hollow out bits and we'd make little cubby huts in there. And I mean, my God, I think about it. Would you, in a million years, let your children play? Anyway, that's some of the fun.
There's another game they played out the back of the house.
My brothers...
Fire brigades.
This was a beauty. My brothers invented the game of fire brigades, which is basically you just set fire to the empty paddock at the back, and then you try and put it out with bits of masonite. And then when it's about to burn down next door's house, Dad comes home and puts it out with a hose. So, yeah, there was plenty of adventures and fun to be had.
So, Mum's gone.
Yep.
And left the four of you.
Yep.
And this is your life in Bendigo at that time, but you'd been at so many schools, and I think that's what makes the book great, because each place have so much character and so many stories to tell. And each page is a story in this. Yeah. I mean, so many books build up to one story, but each page is a story.
Well, all these little schools, I mean, there was one school, the first school that I can remember was in the Victorian Western District. It was called Tarn-de-Warncourt, and it has a beautiful Indigenous name or meaning. The Gajiglian people lived there. And the name of it is so gorgeous. We're on the Western Plains, and there's these ridges of stone as far as you can see. And the name Tarn-de-Warncourt means up and down like a bandicoot running. Isn't that great?
It's gorgeous.
And that little school, there were 22 of us little bandicoots, all standing around. Remember, I love God and my country. I honour the flag. I serve the Queen and cheerfully obey my parents, teacher, and the law. Oh, and I've got to tell you, this is the best story. Okay, so Dad, of course, in these little country schools, he was always visited by the school inspector. And in those days when the school inspector used to visit, you had to be pretty much reading from the exact page and the curriculum. And we've got these school teachers here from that era. And anyway, so what would happen is the bush telegraph would light up, around the district. It was farming, wool mostly in this particular district. And the school inspector's on his way because Dad had tipped off everyone his number plate, right? And anyway, this school inspector, the flag would be run up, there'd be an emu parade, and everyone would be threatened with blue murder unless you stepped out of line all day. And this particular school inspector got fed up with his whereabouts being detected. So he parked on the other side of the road over among the windbreak, and he crawled through the grass commando style and caught Dad ringing the bell 3 minutes late. But this is the best story of all. Dad knew of a teacher just in, very nearby in the next district who was so panicked about the school inspector coming that he hadn't done any of the accounts, kept any of the paperwork for the whole year. He burnt the school down. That is a true story, and he totally got away with it. Burnt down the whole school. Isn't that?
It's amazing.
Yeah, so there's all those sorts
and
of
it's in the book.
stories.
It's in the book.
Yeah, in the book. Yeah.
Wendy, those days, I mean, when there's Noel and Helen and yourself and Phil running amok, really, and you're trying to sort of fulfill that role as a mother, as the oldest, Dad would bring home big parties on the weekends and, bags of yabbies, big Keshan bags full of them. They'd boil them up on the copper. And so there were, but also just craziness, because he hadn't seen you, but all of a sudden there's 30 blokes from the football club in the backyard.
Oh, yeah, 30 blokes from the football club, crikey. Do you remember what they used to... Do you remember the euphemism, a pleasant Sunday morning? Did they ever use that in your part of the neck of the woods? Well, this was Dad's week would go... He's a school teacher, but, I don't know how he managed to do this, but couple of nights a week footy practice. Then Friday night would be, pie night. And then you'd have game day. Then everyone would get on the terps. And then on Sunday morning, he would head out for what was euphemistically called a pleasant Sunday morning. It's where everyone who was hungover from the night before would have a hair of the dog and then roll at home on Sunday and then get up and go to school the next morning. Astonishing.
He did take you on the infamous drives.
Oh, yeah, well, this is... we often didn't have the money for a holiday because Dad spent it all on grog recently.
Well, you had people come in and take all the furniture.
We had all that, this was after Mum went. Dad put everything on hire purchase. He never paid the bills and they came in and repossessed all that furniture. No, really, seriously. I mean, I still have nightmares and I wake up and I think, oh, I own this bed. That's good. No one can come and get it. No, it was really very traumatic that time. When the furniture was repossessed.
And the debt collectors were chasing him, weren't they?
Well, I've got to tell you about the Sunday drive. So this is fantastic. So Dad would come home sometimes. Go, oh, well, we haven't got much money. We're going on holiday. But we're going to go on lots of drives. We go, So off we would tear in the car. There were 4 of us in the back seat. And... because Dad was a school teacher, he was always very keen that these drives were educational. And so he was always forever pointing out native grasses and ferns and various species of eucalypt. And we'd be sitting in the back seat. And then he would say, oh, look, kids, there's a koala up in that tree. We go, oh, where, Dad? Where's the koala? Where? Up there, near that eagle's nest. What eagle's nest, Dad? We can't see that. Are you kids bloody blind? He'd be shouting and, all that kind of thing. So we would go on these, and then he would get home on and he would say, oh, well, wasn't that great? He'd say, it just goes to show you've got everything you need right here in Victoria. And honestly, if we'd been in England, we could have driven to Scotland and back. And we would have seen something rather than old sheds and dry creeks and no koalas. We never saw a koala. Even he apparently did, but anyway, So, yeah.
So there's...
Great. You remember going on Sunday drives, don't you? Oh, weren't they shocking? A plant nursery in the hills. It's just what you ought to be doing on a Sunday when you're about 12 or 13,
So there you are at that age, doing the best you can.
Yep.
Without a dad, without a mum, with a dad every now and then. But then Dad decides to get someone in for the sake of the kids. Mm. But that turns out to be an evil stepmother.
You tell me what think of my stepmother.
Well, it's something out of a Grimm's fairy tale. I mean, it's horrific. So, that thing with your clothes when you were finding your way and you were starting to get into the 60s counterculture, and she decided, well, all Wendy's lovely clothes, and you were very...
70s counterculture. Can I
70s,
just pull it up
70s counterculture. Very poor.
Yeah.
And so she decided to nail all your clothes to the wall. She took all your stuff. But I think the worst thing was when one of you didn't feed the cat. I mean, is that fair income? I can't believe that someone could be that cruel.
Well, what happened was, so Dad moves...
No wonder you have nightmares.
Dad moved out, a housekeeper, because he said, oh, I can't be dealing with all you kids running around. And he was right off the rails.
Where were you at this stage?
We were at Selby.
So that's in the Dandenongs. Yeah.
And he was having drunken parties every night. Us kids would wake up in the morning and the house was all broken, into bits and stuff. Anyway, so he got in a housekeeper, and she got us the whole house back on track. There was food in the fridge and our clothes were ironed. But she was also she was a disciplinarian. I call her a martinet. Happiest when they're making rules for people and then enforcing people to follow those rules. So yes, she, in one incident that I recall, there was lots of rosters with do's and don'ts, and we were on charts. You get 3 stars and you get none, and all that was going on. And That was very difficult for us because we'd been running around, we were quite independent.
And you found your way, didn't you? Like if there was no food, you got some wheat bix and put jam on it and fed the kids whatever you could find
that's right.
in the
And
cupboard.
she came in
you were coping.
Yeah, we were all coping. But anyway, so this particular day, there was this roster about who was supposed to feed the cat, and she yelled at my brothers and said, "Oh, you're useless and you're hopeless," because the cat had just had kittens and you should have fed the cat. And anyway, so we're all sitting in there at the kitchen table, and she got up and she marched outside, and she came back 15 minutes later with a wet bag dripping with the dead kittens in it. She drowned them in the laundry. So it was really she was pretty hardcore.
It was a tough time.
My
That school was one, and there's so many of them. I mean, it does blur a bit, but you've got to read the book. But it was funny, your homework coming home from that school. That was quite...
Oh, yeah.
Because you were going well at that stage.
Well, yeah,
at
my
school.
dad, of course. My dad. I bring my homework home, and Dad, was a very, very clever man and, fabulous, great teacher and everything. But he would take my already corrected homework, he would get out a big red China-graph pencil, recorrect it, and then tell me to take it back to the teacher. So they were thrilled with this, as you can imagine. They were absolutely thrilled, yeah. And here's the thing, I've written for so many magazines over the years. I know Yours magazine, the Women's Weekly, and lots of magazines. And when Dad died, I found a huge cache of all the columns, that I'd written, corrected with.
Everyone goes until they hear the punchline.
Yeah.
So he'd actually done that.
No, he'd done it again
With the red pen.
Yeah.
With the red pencil.
Oh yeah.
But
when the first night that I hosted the big gig, I rang up my dad and said, "Well, what did you think?" He said, "I thought your diction was quite good. A little bit of a room for improvement there, but he's like, honestly." Anyway, he was like, that was what he was like. But I did love my father very, very much, because here's the thing. He wanted me to be Australia's first woman Prime Minister. He put all this extraordinary effort into me. And as I say, I'd be sitting there at the kitchen table reading aloud from the newspaper. My brothers and sisters would be, as my brother Phil says, choking down peas, and I'd have the Sun News pictorial there reading from the newspaper, and my father would be correcting my diction so that I did not have any impediment to my speech, which was an extraordinary thing. It did get embarrassing when he would invite people around and say, "Now Wendy's going to sing for us," and I went, "Oh."
You should have heard the sound check. Wendy was swinging singing the Pina Colada song. It was beautiful.
I have done lots of singing.
You've got a great voice.
Oh, I've done lots of singing, but at the age of 13, so I would only sing if I could stand behind a door. So I know.
But they're also still working on your palette.
Yeah, that's right.
You had things to.
Oh yeah, because I didn't have any. I actually didn't have any proper dentistry until I was probably 17 or 18. I didn't really get fitted with. But I tell you what, this is a bit of a clue, I think. I was at high school in Upway. Then we were Upway High. And I tried out for the lead role of Brigadoon, and I was going to be Fiona. And I thought once everybody heard me sing "Waiting for My Dearie," they would just be on it. And I didn't get the gig. And I can only marvel that I thought I could pull off the lead role, the romantic role, with no actual front teeth, Scott. Now, that will tell you something. I don't know what it tells you about me, but yeah, I thought, oh no, of course I could be the romantic lead.
Wendy, the headline screamed, "Ray was drunk."
Oh, yes. Well, here's the thing. So, I got into, I got into journalism.
I love this chapter.
Journalism and radio and so forth. Anyway, so we're living in Selby, and I always wanted to be a journalist because I think as my brother Phil said, because you used to read from the frickin' newspaper, so I don't know, whatever. So we were living in Selby in Greenwell Road, and it was just a few houses here and there. We were living in the school residence again, of course, Selby Primary School, and anyway, I decided what we needed was a newspaper for the suburb. So I named it the Greenwell Gazette. And it was 4 pages, and I hand drew all the photographs, and I got my brothers and sister to be my reporters about marble tournaments in the driveway, and I had a fantastic front page which said "Power's on," because next door neighbours had just finished the house and the power got put on.
And you printed this on Dad's Gesteppen machine.
Yeah, that's
or whatever.
right, on his
the thing that
Gestetner.
you got drunk
And
just smelling the stuff.
Yeah, 4 pages and a circulation of 5. So in my role as head of distribution, I'm putting it out.
How old were you then?
About 13.
Yeah.
13. About there. And I'm in my role as putting it in the letterboxes. Anyway, I'm thinking this is going really well, and I think what I need here is an exclusive. I need some red meat for my readers. Anyway, the Eagle lands when I get a bit of a tip off that Ray over the road has crashed his truck through his own front fence. And the cops have come around, and one of his kids has tipped me off. And so the headline, Ray was drunk. So I deliver the newspaper, and I reckon it's about 10 minutes later when there's a, bang, 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 bang on the door, and there's Ray threatening to punch Dad in the face, And so I got shut down. But it was a heady month in Australian media. And there's a couple of things I learned from that, Scott. The biggest one is the power of the word allegedly. But I think even if I had said allegedly, I think Ray would have still punched Dad in the face. So, but anyway, so I'd always wanted to be a journalist, and I got my wish.
Wow, what a story. This is Ducks on the Pond.
Yes.
Isn't it? And it's really groundbreaking. I mean, to be the first woman on the editorial floor in the newsroom,
that's right.
which hadn't changed for 100 and
that's right.
whatever
I was
years.
the first ever woman to be on the editorial floor of the Geelong Advertiser in 130 years. Can you believe that? Unbelievable, amazing.
Yeah.
So they're all, as I say, all blokes. I wasn't allowed to wear trousers. I had to wear a skirt, and I used to race around town on my push bike, and go to all the the cop shop and go to the hospital and pick up the weather map from the train at the Geelong station. And I used to have to deliver the 3GL news, the evening news. And there was a great night when I'm racing across town and peak
So you've got the copy paper.
Yeah, I've got the copy paper.
Yeah. And you've written that.
Yeah, written that. And I'm racing across town, and I had these really groovy spiderweb pattern tights, and I got them hopelessly entangled in the bike chain and couldn't go forwards and couldn't go backwards, and 3GL had no evening news that night. And so amazing things happened. So there was a lot of firsts there. Another gal, she started about a year after me, maybe 8 months or so. And anyway, so the boys loved to play pranks on us. And one night they sent us down to the docks in Geelong to visit a crew visiting from an American submarine to ask them about election events, in America. So Rosita and I head down to the dock, and we look around and we go, well, I can't really see anything. I don't know what's going on here. And anyway, we just look like a couple of prostitutes hanging around now. So we better go back to the office. And of course, we go back to the office, ha ha ha, there's no submarine, it's just a joke. You know, like on building sites when they send you out for a left-handed hammer.
Yeah.
So
Stripe
gullible.
paint. Yeah.
Oh, you know. But I mean, I remember I was the first ever woman. I got the industrial round after a while, which I loved.
You did everything, really.
Oh.
You did police rounds,
I did industrial, I did law.
You're
I did,
even Old King Cole.
Yeah, I was the kids column. I did that.
That was
But
Old King Cole, wasn't it?
Yeah, Old King Cole. That's well.
But I've got to ask you about that before you get on to this other job because...
No, I want to tell you about going to the industrial round. I can just.
All right, you tell that, yeah.
Okay, because I
your
was
book.
the first ever chick that went along to the Seamen's Union meetings down on the docks, right? And we're on a dais, like we raised dais, and I'm sitting at the press table, you know, it's just a four-legged sort of table thing, and we're just, the meeting's just about to get underway, and one of the delegates stands and says, "Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, could we get a front put on that table because the young lady's legs are distracting the room?" And I'm like, oh, I'm thinking, what have I been doing? Like, I've been just pulling my skirt, and then they debated it. And so, oh, well, I don't think, anyone should be paying attention to the young lady's legs. I think the people here should be mature enough not to be looking at her legs. And then I think, no, and I honestly, I can't even remember what happened. I was so mortified. But anyway, that's a silly story. Yep.
I'm an obsessive fisherman.
Yes.
And
Oh,
Old King Cole wrote something that I
yes.
have never heard.
Oh, yes.
Was that just Wendy Harmer's imagination, or did you? Can you really? Because this was a column for kids, wasn't it?
Well, it was a kids' column, and it was called the Old King Cole column.
So there's a teenage woman pretending to be Old King Cole.
Pretending to be Old King Cole, and it was there was puzzles and there was colouring in, and for the kids in the Geelong Advertiser, and I had to write the Old King Cole column, and I could never think of what to write. So the biggest mailbag that I ever got was I once wrote, "Oh, hello there, my loyal subjects. I was out fishing last weekend and I found out that the best way to catch a fish is to put a bit of curry on a piece of bread." And I got a huge mailbag for that. It just went off. I don't know why. I don't know why it's stuck in your mind.
No,
it's a very weird story.
To do a fishing show.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Yeah,
I
so
see.
I'm thinking this could be the miracle new bait. Or did you just make that up?
I think so.
So I've never heard it before.
I think
But you
so.
did every round, didn't you? I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, I did lots of rounds. This is also where I acquired the name Harmer. I stupidly, I went off and got married when I was 19 years old. A bit like my mum, we didn't have any money. I couldn't see how I was going to be able to afford my studies at the Gordon Institute and then afford the flat. And I was from the country and I didn't know anyone. But I had this boyfriend and he said, "Well, you can move in with me," because he had a regular job. And once we moved into the flat together, he just nagged me to get married. So I thought, well, I remember driving off to get married, and the night before I said to my girlfriends, "Well, there's always divorce, right? Isn't that?" Went, "Oh, yeah, I'll be fine." Anyway, so we went off and got married, and I got back to the office, and the managing editor said, "From now on, your name," because my name is Brown, I'm Wendy Brown, "and from now on, you are only to be known as Mrs. Harmer in the office, and you have to write under the byline Wendy Harmer." And so because I went from that newspaper, then I went to the Sun News Pictorial, and then I kind of went into comedy. I never got the chance to change it back. So now I'm Wendy Harmer. I'm actually married, and so I'm actually Mrs. Donahue, if it comes to that. But I've got all these aliases, which is quite handy.
Very handy indeed.
Good for tax.
It's funny, yes. Being so poor and virtually living off the land, shooting kangaroo, shooting particularly rabbits because they were in plague proportions across that arid landscape, but learning how to go ferreting with Noel, and then being on MasterChef, sometimes these things are handy.
Well, they are. I mean, I've been asked to do lots and lots of reality shows over the years, and they're really not my look. The day I go on Big Brother, or what about that thing in the jungle where they make you eat
Yeah.
hummus? Would you
Eat
do
worms.
that in a million years? And I've been offered nearly $1 million to do it. And it's so funny because even the last series, you know Max Markson, you know,
Yeah.
the celebrity kind of, promoter. He leaves me this message and said, I've got a great deal for you. You know, this is going to da-da-da. And he gives me this offer. And I said, this is not enough money on the planet to get me to do that show. But anyway, I did do one show, and that was Celebrity MasterChef. And George Columbaris watched me joint a rabbit, and he said it was the most expert thing that he'd ever seen. And that I could be a comm chef in his kitchen any day of the week. I just went... I could have even done it with my teeth if he'd asked me. But, so that's... I mean, you won't believe this is a hilarious thing. So I'm on this show. I only lasted till the second show. I got beaten by Simon Kadich, the cricketer, who has no sense of smell. Can you imagine? What an ignominious end that was. But anyway,
Into the comedy, of course.
Yes.
You seem to pick things, and you deliberately had a crack at that because it was...
Well, it was funny how it all came about. So I'm at the Sun News Pictorial, and I'm there. I'm on the Urban Affairs round. I've just started at State Rounds, and I'm hoping to go to Canberra, one day, and then maybe an overseas correspondent or whatever. And the features editor says to me, look, there's this thing called this new wave of comedy, this alternative cabaret. Could you go out and have a look at that and then report back for a feature article? I went, oh yeah. I'd never been to a comedy club in my life. I was a country kid. I'd never even been to the theatre, really. I think I'd seen one play or something. And so I went along to this thing at Melbourne Uni, and it blew my mind. There was Steve Vizard. He was playing a character called Buddy Chuck, like this crooner, with Paul Grabowski on piano.
Oh, brilliant, yes.
And Richard Stubbs was doing stand-up, and there was, do you remember a group, Lost Trio Swing Barkers?
Yes, they were brilliant.
They were on. And then there was a comic, David Argue, who was on skates, playing a foam piano, singing I Go to Rio. I am sitting there, honestly, with my notebook, Scott, like this. I mean, just blown away. So
you didn't get a bucket of poo for that review, I hope.
No, I didn't.
Because that's in the book.
You are jumping ahead there.
Sorry.
About a friend of mine, yes, who used to regularly, the promoter John Pinder, who used to send reviewers buckets of cow shit. But you have jumped ahead there.
Sorry,
Scott.
We'll go back.
Anyway, so what happens is I go back to the office and I file this story, and then I started haunting the comedy clubs, and I go back to work and I say, I'm going to leave journalism and become a stand-up comedian. And they said, well, you were what? I found out later on that apparently all the members of staff had decided that they were going to have an intervention. And even when I was on the big gig, when I was on TV, I'd go back into the newsroom and they go, oh, come for your old job back, have you? No, sort of thing. But anyway, so I started going to the comedy clubs. I got a boyfriend who was managing a venue in Collingwood. And there was Marianne Fay and Ian McFadgen, you remember from the comedy club, and Peter Moon, you remember from Fast Forward. And they were doing a show, and Marianne was very, very pregnant. Anyway, she dropped out, and I got her part in.
But she was very important to you at that stage.
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
she?
Marianne and I did a lot of shows together. We did sort of these all-female reviews called Faking It, which were really, really popular. So I started out in sketch comedy, but at the same time I was also going to watch the blokes doing stand-up, and so I was watching Peter Rosethorne and Glenn Robbins and Shane Bourne and Richard Stubbs again. And I was doing all these characters, Scott, but I thought I would actually quite like just to stand up as me. Because I think
She had someone called Kronk.
Oh yeah, Val Cronk. That was one of the characters I did. Val
Yeah.
Cronk. I had this cleaning lady called Val Cronk. She'd come round, and I used to do the Ray Martin. She was always saying, "Oh, for goodness sake!" And she was on the Ray Martin show, and I walked through the audience going, "Honestly, I've seen people give birth cleaner than this." I once tried to scrub the tattoo off Johnny Depp's arm on the Ray Martin show.
Wow.
But I wanted to leave those characters behind and just do me. So then I stepped out to do stand-up comedy just as me. And I was really the first Australian woman to do that. So I thought the world... I thought there must have been other... But everyone, no, they tell me I was the first. And the thing that really struck me, and the reason I wanted to do it, was because all the boys were up there talking about their pets and their families and their cars and whatever, and half the audience were women. And I'm thinking, well, I think our lives are pretty funny too. Going shopping with your mum or, whatever it might be. And I thought I would really like to put the women's perspective. And so I started with just a little 5-minute routine. And then I started doing longer and longer and longer, and all the boys really liked having me around. And I got the best compliment from one of my colleagues, because he said, "When you're on stage," he said, "we hear something that we haven't heard before," and he said the pitch of the laughter goes from instead of a ho ho ho, it's a hee hee hee. And I think, that is, I'm very proud of that, I'm very proud of that. That's fantastic. Because we've all heard, over the years, we've all heard people say, women aren't funny. Well, honestly, I mean, it just denies you a fundamental part of your humanity to say that. Because, apparently, the pet budgie can make you laugh, or the dog can make you laugh, but a woman can't make you laugh. I mean, what is that about? So I was really kind of angry about that. So that was the other motivation. That was some of the motivation. The other motivation was, you've been staring at me for so long, I'll give you something to stare at, So, I was a bit like that. I was a woman on a mission.
On page 218, I have a notation, a tough gig. You're backstage, and the chant from the southern London hooligans is, "Fuck off, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off." Are you hearing that?
Yeah. I worked a lot in London.
A place called The Tunnel.
The Tunnel. I worked a lot in London.
A comedian's graveyard.
Comedian's graveyard, yeah. Rob Brydon, Rob Brydon, he once played there, and when the crowd worked out he was Welsh, they just went, meh, 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 and he had to leave, So, Steve Coogan had his worst gig ever there. And I was gigging around in London at the time doing stand-up, and I knew something was really up, because I said, I'm playing The Tunnel. And they all went, "Really? You're going to play The Tunnel? Are you crazy?" So I drove to this place, and it was just near the Blackwall Tunnel, near the gasworks or whatever. And I walk in, and there's a very famous person who ran the tunnel named Malcolm Hardy. Now, Malcolm ran this joint like a coliseum. Half the audience this is in the 80s, half the audience are punks with the mohawks, and the other half are football hooligans in club colours.
A bit like this crowd tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, and they are out to get you. Anyway, so I walked in and I said, listen, no, wait, Malcolm, I'm not doing this gig. Because actually, the two gigs that had been on before me, that was the chant, mark off, and chucking stuff. And I said, no way, I'm doing this, Malcolm. He said, tell you what, do. If you go out there and give it a go, he said, I'll give you an extra 25 quid to get a cab home. And I thought, well, that's not a bad deal, because the tubes, I don't want to get the tubes. So I went, all right. So I get out there, and I go, g'day. And they're on their feet, straight away. They're like, oh, give us a suck on your Foster's, cobber, kangaroos, wombats, pineapples. And so I just stood there and I just waited for a bit. Yeah, wait. McEwen's 80 shilling. Badges. You know, and of course they went, what has she been, what, and they all went, what the fuck was she, she's just talking back to us, what's going on here? And I mean, no one can do a pineapple impersonation or a wombat impersonation or anything, you know, so,
hedgehogs.
you know, and so they all went, oh, all right, we better just shut up then, and I mean, you know, show us your tits. I've heard that on every continent, I think. But I did come back with, I did develop a very good comeback for that. Show us your tits. And I said, well, you can always tell the bottle-fed boys, can't you? Never mind, sweetheart. One day you might get a girlfriend and she might show you hers. So,
of course, your children, the audience, I don't know how to put this, but your children, particularly one of them, Maeve, I think, everyone knows very well that she was well fed.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
As a baby.
Because I did commercial radio. I was the first ever woman to co-host a commercial radio program.
With Peter Moon and
Andrew Denton. And Agro the puppet.
Jamie Dunn.
Now, why anyone is on radio as a puppet, I don't know. But he'd be sitting there going, oh, g'day, Jamie Dunn. And then he'd go, oh, g'day, it's Agro. I'd be sitting next to him, no, this is just stupid. This is really, really stupid. And as you'll read in the book, he used to drop his dacks all the time. I'm actually serious. He would call it doing his Nadia comment. He would stand like this. He would go up and go. He's called it doing his Nadia Comaneci. He would stand like that and drop his pants, and I would be able to see his penis. And my co-host Paul Holmes says that I used to say, "Oh, put it away, Jamie. We've all seen it before." And on we'd go. So it was just bizarre that there was no Agro the puppet, but I got to see his dick. It was a weird... Anyway, so I was like the first woman to be hired as a host on commercial radio, because what had happened was the person who hired me said he'd been watching Oprah, and he said he had this epiphany, and he said, oh, Oprah has this amazing power, with women, and he thought, I reckon there's a lot of women who listen to the radio. And he said, I reckon we should get a woman and put her on the radio and see how we go. And of course, that was 1992. And of course now there are, there's a woman in every lineup, isn't there, on those commercial radio programs. But there wasn't at the time. I did that for 11 years. And what you were talking about there is when my daughter Maeve was born, I had a month off at home. Yeah, a month.
And this is 3:45 starts too. You're talking about bloody hard yakka.
Oh, yeah,
As a breakfast radio person.
Oh, yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It's bloody hard.
Yeah, it is hard, really hard yakka. So anyway, I stayed at home, and I'd be breastfeeding Maeve on air, so the whole of Sydney could hear. Anyway, the reason that I decided to go back to work was because we were doing a show preceding the Oscars, and we were talking to Jeffrey Rush live in Los Angeles. And I'm sitting there at home, the headphones on, Maeve, and she started to cry. And I remember I put my hand over her mouth, and I'm going, yes, Jeffrey, and who else is going to be at the Oscars? And all of a sudden I went, oh, holy shit, I'm really suffocated my own baby.
She's okay. She's very...
She's fine.
Yes.
But my husband Brendan, who's here tonight, he ran the ship at home, and I went off to work. So he's been a house husband for all that time. Yes, thank you, Brendan. Now, Brendan has always been very, very good about the stories that I've told about him on radio. Because when I started on radio, what usually was happening on breakfast radio was blokes who were doing sort of scripted character work on radio. But I came along and I moaned about being single, and we were watching Ally McBeal and Friends, and so we brought all this relationship stuff to the airwaves. And I mean, my lovely listeners, you know, after I left, they reckon that they remember the night that I actually went on a date with Brendan. They all said, she's going to marry that bloke. And I did. But anyway, so I used to tell lots and lots of stories about home. And so Brendan, I don't know where he is, but he's usually pretty good about it. Where are you, dear? Oh, there he is there. Where is he? Hiding. Anyway, I should just tell you, by the way, Brendan has refused to read anything in this book that's written about him. Whereas, if he had written anything about me, I would have been going through it forensically with a battery of lawyers just standing by. But anyway, so there's one story that he thought, yeah, you might be going a bit far there, Wen. And it was a story where he was in the backyard, and we live in the northern beaches of Sydney, and it is, you know, tick country there. You know, the local pub is called the Old Tick and Scratch. Anyway, I had told the audience that I had got some ticks out of his scrotum with a pair of tweezers, and he'd actually at one point asked me to use my teeth. And Brendan said, that might be just going a little bit too far. Thank you. But we got paid the big bucks, so in the end, you know, it worked out.
Wendy, there's a page in the book and where your dad spoke at your wedding.
Yeah.
And I think that's something maybe we could finish on that point. Because
maybe we could, because it was if I can find it, because it was a really a beautiful thing when, you know, Brendan and I think
particularly in context of all those early years. I think,
that's right.
Very tough
hang on. Let me see if I can find it.
Sorry to.
If I can find it. But yeah, so Dad, here's what my dad, and a lot of people reading this book are very puzzled by my father, because he's a really complex
He's
character.
intriguing. He really is.
Would you believe my mother and my father got back together after being separated for 50 years? And honestly, it was the maddest thing ever. I know. And I had to get used to saying mum and dad in the same sentence after half a century. It was ridiculous. But anyway, it's all been crazy. But this is what my dad said at my wedding, which is nice. He said, the circumstances of Wendy's growing up have made her a complex and interesting personality, along with some insecurities like the rest of us. She pivots around a core of confidence, an inner source of sustenance, which she has built up for herself, and this has given her a great sense of self-reliance and a sense of purpose. She is emotionally liberated, or what I choose to call non-dependent. We are delighted by Wendy's marriage to Brendan, for he has the capacity to bear with her uncertainties and doubts. He lovingly supports her curiosity, adventure, and risk-taking that her chosen career path constantly sets before her. We trust that they will continue to interact so that the one helps the other to feel beautiful, confident, joyous, lovable, smart, worthwhile, and whole. Isn't that nice? And 30 years next year, and go on, I know you need to say it.
You don't get that for murder these days.
There you go.
She knows everything I'm going to say. Having been a very quick-witted radio person, and I've been a half-witted radio person. But Wendy, it's been such a pleasure, and it's such a great read, honestly. I've had so much fun reading the book, and as I said, it's, you know, I mean, we just scratched the surface. Who ever worked in a giant 6-story high soft drink bottle and
there's that.
You know, who wanted to go at it with a sledgehammer. I mean, there's so much.
Who's dressed in a giant koala suit? Can I
Are you
just...
talking about me or you?
No, me.
I've done that too.
Have you?
Coco the 2KO koala. That was my first job in radio.
Really?
At 2KO in Newcastle.
What was the name of the koala?
Coco the 2KO koala. He had a big head.
Crikey.
Jeez.
Well, I was Willie the Olympic koala.
Oh,
Do you know what I used to do when I was at the Last Laugh and we would be doing shows together? And what would happen is, well, this was around the Olympics, 1984. There was this thing this sketch that we were raising money for the Olympics, and I used to put the big bear suit on. And
did it smell funny? I hope it wasn't this one I wore.
They were very smelly, weren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, Willie, the Olympic. Anyway, so what would happen is I would dance through the auditorium, and any of these piss patrons who've been giving us trouble, I used to dance up to the table and go whack around the head, whack around the head like that, whack around the head. And Richard Stubbs remembers hearing these two blokes standing at the bar going, oh, that fucking bear just hit me. And his mate going, Robbo, you big girl, it's a koala. Honestly, the funniest thing. I used to really whack them as hard as I could. Anyway.
Wendy Harmer, ladies and gentlemen. Have we got time for a few questions from the floor?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If we have, what is that?
We have gone over a bit, but
Oh, well, you have to ask the...
I will have two questions.
2 questions.
Wow, sorry about that.
Yes. Yes.
Wendy, I'm agreed. What stands out from your whole career? What is your prized gig?
Well, you know, the thing that I am most proud of, I did write an opera with Baz Luhrmann, but that's in the book. But what I am most proud of is actually being able to live off my wits and make a good living from that. Like, I mean, as I say, you know, I've always thought where there's a chance you have to take it or either invent it. And so I'm really proud of the fact that, you know, most of the things that I've done, I have come up with myself. You know, I haven't had to particularly go and, well, obviously I have worked for someone, obviously, but just the fact that I've been able to, just by being a smart ass, have done all this. And I think for most people in the entertainment business, that is the holy grail, actually. It is just to keep working and keep the gigs going. I've had the most fantastic times with celebrities. I mean, Jeff Goldblum, that man can cuddle. He is so gorgeous. I've travelled around the world and had a fantastic time doing stand-up everywhere. Like, I did stand-up in Texas, I remember, and this bloke came up to me afterwards and said, "Why, you're as cute as a speckled pup underneath a fire truck." And in Miami, I was at a club at like 2:00 in the morning doing stand-up, and I came out and went, "G'day, anyone here been to Australia?" And the whole audience went, "Hey?" Not one person spoke English in the whole place. I mean, just such great adventures, performing in New York and all that. So yeah, then I think, but I couldn't really pick out one thing from another. But that's the thing I'm proud of. Just being able to forge a career for myself, I think.
I'm going to say what a delight it was to hear with Robbie back.
Thank you.
Exactly my peer in age, and your reactions were just jewel-like. He'd be prattling on about some new technology, and you'd say, "Give me."
Oh well, the thing was, he really needed to be taken in hand. That boy, he'd been doing that shift for 4 years, and and so I just had to winkle it out of him. What's going on with you, anyway? So I kind of, I found out that his family called him Traffic Cop Bob. Because he's a bit of a, stickler for orderliness. Yeah. So once I had that weapon, I was on my way. Then Radar Boy, of course, because he's incessantly, reading the weather radars. I mean, we had a a fantastic time together. I want to really make the point that we could have stayed on if we wanted to, but we were just awfully tired at the end of COVID and bushfires and floods and everything. We'd had those 4 years on breakfast, and the alarm was still going at 3:45 a.m. for me, and it was just, And during COVID, I worked from home for, quite a long time, and I had no vision of Robbie. I just had audio, so I would have to concentrate on his breathing to work out whether he was going to ask another question or not, And so I get to the end of that 4-hour shift, I was just completely exhausted. So, but we agreed. I've been sacked in the most creative ways that you can think of, but in this particular instance, we agreed and we went off happily together. So, thank you. I'll pass that on to Robbie. Thanks.
Okay, lucky last. Thanks, Wendy. When you finished on 702, you said you were going to go and work with your son in a farm. Is that right? Or what have you done since then?
Well, I sat and stared at a wall for about 6 months, and then because I got the advance to write this book 8 years ago, I thought, I better have a go at it, better have a crack at it, otherwise I've got to hand the money back. My son and I were kind of thinking of going into business, but he wised up. Maeve still lives at home with us, and Marley lives next door, which is pretty cool. He's 25 now. And don't you love it? There he is, he's 25. I walk in the house, and there's Marley standing in front of my fridge like this. Oh, I'll have that cheese. That looks good.
That's nice.
Oh, Mum, have you got a spare bottle of vodka? Who has a spare bottle of vodka? But anyway, so yeah, we're very we're still there on the oldie northern beaches, but both the kids are really well and doing really. The thing that I value most in my children, and the thing I think that Brendan and I, I think kids, from my point of view, they kind of almost bring themselves up in a way. As Angela Caterns always calls it, benign neglect. And Ange and I had a lovely chat this morning, actually. And she's in Lismore now. She lives in Lismore, and she does if you're on ABC Listen, she does ABC Lismore on a Saturday morning.
Just after the big fish.
Yeah. And so, if you want to tune in, you'll hear that the voice still sounds like honey,
You and her
beautiful.
really get on, don't you?
Look, honestly, that is the worst thing. I don't know what the thing I was on there, but the worst thing where I was going, but I'm happy to say this. Angela Caterns and I, when we did the early girlies over the summer, every radio journalist in Sydney said, these two girls are going to get a gig together, and we should have. Because I had been number one in FM radio for years. Ange had been number one in AM radio for years. So putting us together was a no-brainer. It should have been a no-brainer. Listen to what one radio executive said. He said, they're never going to put two women on. He said, you got to think about it from the bloke's perspective. I mean, he's nagged all day and night by his wife, and then he turns on the radio and he's nagged by two women. So, it's still, Lord. Anyway, I don't know what I was going to say there about Anne, where I was going with that, but yeah, she would love to. I'd love to work again with her. We just had a tremendous.
Maybe
time.
some summer programming, perhaps again. Or?
Look, honestly, I think it's really funny. I never know where the ABC is going. Sometimes, like me and the rest of the world, sometimes it's like, oh yes, let's do everything we can and we'll get young people in. And then they turn around and go, well, that didn't work. So let's. Now I think they're going for an older demographic. Who knows what it might be? Penguins, it might be next. You wouldn't know, but yeah. So I don't know. But we did say today that it would be fun to do something together again.
Hope so.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Wendy Harmer, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.